We're looking at the third fruit of the Spirit, peace. And there's three words that mean peace. A Greek word, eirene, shalom, a Hebrew word, and peace, the English word we're probably the most familiar with. And the word has various meanings and it's used in various ways. One, no wars going on, cessation of hostilities between people, nations, and everything in between. It's the simplest definition, but not insignificant, because when you're not distracted by chaos around you, there are all manner of other good things that can happen. Prosperity and well-being is another the definition. It's used as a greeting or farewell. The Jews used that as a greeting, shalom, and it was also used in some of the letters in the New Testament. They would wish peace on the people before he started his letters, usually Paul, and then wish them peace afterwards. Peace with God, which leads to being at peace with yourself. Inner peace or spiritual peace, which is both. Its English counterpart, the Greek word Paul used, takes on the flavor of the context it's found in, and Paul was writing in tumultuous and troubled times, so that what he was conveying was tranquility in the midst of chaos. So whether it's Greek, English, or Hebrew, the word expresses a number of different qualities. So while peace takes on different meanings in different situations, we should consider those who first heard Paul's letter were first century Christians which were living in an age of persecution where their lives were on the line. It's almost laughable to hear modern day American Christians complain about their perceived loss of religious freedom. We can worship any way we want, anywhere we want, anytime we want. How much freedom do we need? This is not persecution. We're not facing martyrdom. It's not persecution to live in a society where you're asked to respect and just be decent to people who believe differently than you. Now we start today on this fruit listed, peace. We've already covered love and joy as being fruits of the Spirit. That can be largely states of mind that may affect us very quietly, very privately, helps us keep our ballast and helps us stay on an even keel when the world outside is not reflecting those things at all. We might have love in our hearts when no one around us does. We might be feeling a quiet joy in spite of circumstances that are not joyous at all. In fact, you might start thinking that these fruits of the Spirit are for us and for us alone, but they affect our bearing in the world. At least they suggest to others that there is more than one way to react to things that are going on around them. We have an effect on others whether we know that or not. Now, I don't want to oversell that. If you've been in a room with very angry people, they're likely to stay very angry regardless of what you do or don't do, say or don't say. Most, but not all, a few of them might look at your calm state and look at their angry brothers and sisters and then back at you and remember that. Think about it, appreciating the fact that anger is not the only way to feel. They may not talk to you, and you may not talk to them, but you have very quietly set an example that might remain, might have a lasting impact. So, love, joy, and now peace. Fruits of the Spirit, evidence that we are bearing fruit, we are spiritually healthy, growing, connected to the vine. If peace, the fruit of the Spirit, starts as an inner peace, well, sometimes it doesn't stay there. There's a story in Mark, Matthew, and Luke about Jesus calming the storm, which I'm sure that you're familiar with. And the significance of this is, well, just let me tell you give you a little background on this. Jesus had been preaching, teaching, and delivering parables to crowds around the shores of the Sea of Galilee. He was exhausted, sleeping in the back of the boat. Matthew records this as having occurred just after the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus had told his disciples he wanted to go across to the other side of this big lake. And if they pushed out in the water and the crowds could see they were going to another nearby shore, they would follow them. And while we're never going to understand what it meant to be fully man and fully God at the same time, we know at least that the human side of Jesus was, like I said, exhausted. So Jesus, in the back of the boat, somehow sleeping through all this, was awakened by his frantic disciples. And that's our first question. What did the disciples expect him to do? The Sea of Galilee was about 7 miles wide and 13 miles long. It was surrounded on all sides by hills and mountains, which were geographical features that accounted for the unexpected storms that seemed to come out of nowhere. When the cool winds rushed down the sides of the hills and mountains and then ran across the warmer water, it created a turbulence, and the big waves that were one of the storms depicted in this story was that storms came on the Sea of Galilee from 3 directions: east, south, and west. And storms from the west occurred very suddenly in a matter of minutes, and such storms on this sea still happen. Storms that had just arisen in a few minutes are apt to disappear quickly too. So to those of you who are looking for a natural explanation for this, there's that. But add this: half of Jesus' disciples were fishermen who had fished in this very lake, and so they knew this. And yet they were afraid for their lives. The story originally appeared in Mark, and later, when the other 2 Gospels were written, they saw fit to include it. So what happened that day was meaningful to them. And if Matthew and Luke were written to add to the early church's liturgical needs, perhaps Mark was too short to provide for the whole year, this is one of those accounts that it preserved. Before Christ, worship in the synagogues included readings from the prophets, and that tradition was followed into the first century Christian worship to meet its liturgical needs, with Mark and Matthew and Luke as well. And that continues in our day, just like when we read from the Old Testament some Sundays and from the New Testament others, and once in a while from both. So why was this story included in the 3 synoptic Gospels? What was the meaning that we are to take from it? Well, life has its storms, has its moments when we are not sure what's going to happen next, and we have our moments of fear. The miracle is not just that Jesus calmed the storm, as he kept his cool throughout it. Things that happen in our lives can take our peace from us, or not. Now, you may be thinking that's a bit simplistic, and on the surface of it, I agree with you. We're living in an age that actively promotes the exact opposite of peace: anxiety. Life is fraught with this tension. We feel like we're torn between 2 options and down to our last thread. Advertising exploits our nagging fear of not measuring up to others and promises that if we would just buy this or that product, we'd be okay. Social media does this in other ways, convincing us that everyone is more popular, better looking, or more talented than we are. And particularly young people, many of whom are already treading water in a sea of self-doubt. I'm not one of those Christians who is at war with modern medicine. I've suffered from anxiety myself, and my road to recovery started with antidepressants. I learned rather late in life that anxiety and depression are 2 sides of the same terrible coin. So exploring that avenue is nothing to be ashamed of. There was a time, and I came of age in that time, when being a Christian said something good about the kind of person you were. It meant you were kind and decent and honest, that you could be counted on. And somehow that identity, which spoke of good character, became tarnished. And in these days, being identified as a Christian may put your character into question. I mourn our society's loss of expectations, our expectations of decency and moral uprightness. The way our reputation has been sullied, the way the term Christian is often a red flag till those have no faith at all, and discourages others from going any further. And what is really troublesome is how much of that damage is self-inflicted. Get off my soapbox now. Next time we're going to consider the fourth fruit of the Spirit, patience. The thing that people want, but they want it right now. Till then, be kind to each other, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, remembering who we are and who we represent. Till next time.